Yeah.
I can hear you perfectly fine.
Awesome.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Doom Live. We are streaming on the WFTN FTN News YouTube channel. Tonight's guest is House Minority Leader Arthur Chen, a member. I don't think he's a member of the party, but are you?
I'm a non-caucusing pioneer, so
Yes, I've heard the
member of
reason
the
why.
party, non-caucus member. Yeah,
Yes, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Well, you wanted to come on. You're allowed to come on. So let's just get this interview started, shall we?
Yeah, please.
My first question is, who muted him? Who- oh, someone's server muted him. I'm just gonna mute that. I have powers to do that. Uh, I didn't server mute him. I unmuted him. My first question though is on the elections coming up. I believe you are running for re-election, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Why you decide to? Why did you decide to run for re-election?
Well, simply the work isn't done yet. I mean, I was elected in a special election um, less than 2 weeks ago, and we so far have pushed 5 bills through the House in a just small frame of time. So, to me, I still have a lot that I want to get done, that I want to accomplish, and especially with this new Constitution coming, I want to help Newsom move forward into this next chapter. So that's why I decided to run for reelection.
Speaking of this new chapter, one of the main challenges that are coming with it is the multi-ballot system apparently failing. We're going back to the old top seven wins the election. Are you confident that you will win re-election with this new system?
Yeah, I am. I think I have a great team who's going to work with me to campaign whenever the next election is actually held. Um, I really do think that this next election will go well for us. I'm really confident in that.
Speaking of us, you're the House Minority Leader, yet you are a non-caucusing member of the Political Party. Why is that?
I chose to leave the Pioneer Caucus due to the failures of the Speaker of the House and his disastrous leadership. Um, a lot of things made sense for me and a bunch of other members of the Pioneer Party to leave, including that there was only so many rooms on committees for the majority members, so we left so that we could still have our voices heard in committees. Um, we also felt like we weren't represented by the conventional House leadership, and we wanted to kind of be able to express ourselves and not be drowned out in the crowd. So that's why we decided to still remain members of the Pioneer Party, still support the president's agenda, but leave the caucus formally.
Do you believe that you would ever return to the caucus?
Absolutely. I'm planning on returning to the caucus immediately following this election and hopefully using that time to um, bring the caucus together around regular order and to allow the House to continue to press forward with the work of the country.
What sort of work have you been doing in the House?
Oh, a lot of things. For starters, we passed some really strong pieces of legislation. One of the ones I'm most proud of is the Law Enforcement Protection Act, which would make it first degree murder to kill a law enforcement officer who's on duty in uniform and on team. I think that's a really strong protection for our men and women in blue to make sure that the people who deliberately cause harm to them are held to the highest, um, to the, uh, sorry, excuse me, to the strongest degree of the law as possible. The other work I've been doing is um, reorganizing the Department of Justice. I have a bill that's going to be coming on the House floor tomorrow that would radically reorganize the offices of the Assistant Attorney Generals, the divisions, and to give the NUSA Department of Justice a more um, to adapt it for Roblox standards, if that makes sense.
I see. If you were reelected, what would you do? What are your plans?
Well, I'm working with Chief Judge Rummy, Chief and the District Court to create the Judicial Conference, which would radically reorganize the 20th title of the United States Code to empower the Judicial Conference to make decisions as the administrative body for the United States courts. Currently, we're working on that right now. It's going to end up being around a 20-something page bill. We're only on page 17 right now, as we've gone through and amended statutes and reorganized them. So that's something that's going to definitely have to come in the next term. There just isn't enough time to do that at this point. I'd also really like to start working on proper legislative oversight for the executive agencies, working with House committees and committee chairmen to properly oversee what the executive branch has been doing. We probably appropriated almost 37,000 Robux of funds to the federal government, and I'd like to hold them accountable and see what they're using that money for.
Speaking of the whole judicial conference, you were behind a couple of impeachments against 3 judges, one of which has since resigned. You say that you are confident that they will pass the Senate. What made you go in and start the impeachment process? Did you look at their activity, and what is your end game?
Well, look, John, I mean, these judges were either extremely inactive, I'm talking about months of just radio silence, or extremely incompetent, making illegal rulings, or in the case of one particular judge, mandating that Australian English be used before her court. Which, if you can tell me what Australian English is, I will happily listen. But she put a man in jail for 21 days for violating her Australian English rule. That's just something that's completely unbecoming of a judge, and especially one that sees the highest volume of cases on the district court. So I really felt that these 3 individuals had no business being in the judiciary anymore, and that's why I moved forward with their impeachments. My goal is to remove them from office. As you said earlier, Judge Private did the honorable thing and he resigned, which I still thank him for his service in his time on our judiciary. But the other 2 judges, I really hope we can get those 2/3 of the Senate and have them removed to make way for someone else who could do the job properly and commit fully to the role.
You are supporting T Soups for re-election, right?
That's correct, yes.
Who do you think would run against her?
Well, a few people have already declared. I believe Nasinovich has already announced his candidacy for the presidency. I think Senator Apollo is also exploring a run. I'm not sure if he's already declared his candidacy yet or not. I think those are just a few names. I think Speaker Harkology is likely going to be the vice presidential running mate of Nasinovich. I mean, I think, as per usual, a lot of members of Congress look up at the White House and envision themselves sitting in the Oval Office. Whether I think that they have a standing chance or not, that's who really is looking at running at this point.
Time for the hard questions. Ready?
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
You came back to Noosa after, I don't even know how long it's been. I remember you being here as a prosecutor. Then you were at Ridgeway for a while doing, I don't even know what you were doing, but you were a prosecutor, I believe, or a member of the state General Assembly. What made you decide to come back, and do you think you'll stay here for long?
Yeah, I mean, I really love the Noosa community. I've been in here for years. I've been in almost every facet of it, from law enforcement to Congress to the legal community. I really love the people here, honestly. I mean, it's a great community. It's people who care about each other. I really do think that I will stay for a long time. I don't think Ridgeway is coming back anytime soon. And I want to help out. That's the main reason why I came back is I saw a country that was starting to rebuild itself under President T. Soups, and I think we all have her to thank for that. And I just wanted to throw my hat in the ring and say, hey, what can I do to bring this community back to the state of activity that I remember.
You said earlier you were not caucusing with the majority party, yet you were the minority leader, yet still supporting the president and her ideals and essentially her party. The party currently has, I believe, a supermajority in Congress, and no other party has come close since, except for that one time when the Plutocrats managed to win a majority, although that was with George Godsent. Do you believe there is a chance for an active minority that could challenge the government?
I think there absolutely is. I mean, there's been a lot of pushback on, I think, unfairly on some of President Chisoup's policies. So I do believe there's potential for an active minority. I know a bunch of members of the Senate actually changed their caucus from Pioneer to Plutocratic to signify their opposition to the government. So I do think so. I think we'll see how this next House election goes, and whoever succeeds me as minority leader will certainly have an interesting time working with the president and potentially opposition there too.
Do you believe anyone from not within the party will win a seat in the upcoming House elections?
Oh, absolutely. I really think that's possible, especially with switching to the top 12 system. I think it's more possible than ever that someone will win a seat from the minority.
Do you believe it is difficult for someone from a minority party to win a seat?
I think it is. I mean, I think the country sees the amazing job that President Chisoup's has done, and they want to join her. They want to get on board with her. They want to join the party that she started, and that is the Pioneers, who has the most resources, the most support, and the most name recognition. So I think it's definitely an uphill battle, but it certainly is not impossible because we have senators who are in the minority parties, and we have a bunch of members of the former members of the House who are running as either independents or as members of the minority party. So it's harder, but I don't think it's impossible.
Do you believe people just run with the majority party, the Pioneer Party, just because they're more likely to get a seat?
Unfortunately, I do. I think that was a cause of a lot of inactivity in the last Congress. I think that a lot of the members of the Pioneer Party just joined because it was popular. I think that President Chisoup's has done a great job of trying to cut back on those people and working with the National Committee to make sure that the candidates for House really are supporters of the vision and could actively advocate for that if elected. So I think it's a little bit of both, but we're getting better.
Mr. Cho now joins us. Are you a member of the majority or minority party at all?
Well, I am chair of the second biggest political party, which is in opposition. So, yes, I'm an opposition.
Do you care to respond
Senator.
to what you've just heard?
I think what we see more in the Pioneers is, it's not okay. I wouldn't call it finding candidates to be supportive. It's polling what ideological differences you had. We look at the primaries happening to Gatto and Vinnick, and what I see more in that is more of a focused purging of candidates in that majority party. And you could argue, why were they pioneers in the first place? But I don't really think it's about their political positions, because their political positions may be close to the pioneers, but they go against Vice President Gobies, they go against T on one or two issues, and they end up primaried and focused out by the National Committee. That's not something we should aim for. And I do feel like people just run with the majority party to win. I think multi-ballot really lended itself to that style of campaigning. Look, Pioneers, even this year, or this cycle, they had a former plutocrat senator who was elected with George just switched to them, and they didn't care at all. Doug Slapman, he just straight up switched parties to keep winning, even though he was an insanely inactive senator. And that also happened with someone who ran plutocrat in the last election cycle. I think that we should be trying to avoid that, and I hope with multi-ballot getting removed, more people will run with the minority party.
I will just say quickly, John, that
Go
we
ahead.
are not purging candidates who we disagree with. We are not purging anyone. The voters of the Pioneer Party decided that they did not want to go along with the quite frankly, ludicrous impeachments.
And why
of
did you just
the
say
vice
you were
president.
working with the National Committee to remove them as candidates?
We're not working with the national committee to remove them as candidates. We are working with the party and campaigning for people who we believe will strengthen the vision of our country and our party. We're not.
So you're supporting candidate primaries to force out people you don't like in the House.
I mean, I will campaign for anyone who shares my vision and experience. And in this case, Lucky Vinnick and Guido Guerrera were two members of Congress who supported the, quite frankly, uncalled for and totally wild impeachments.
You mean when Goebbels tried to expel like 6 senators unconstitutionally without a trial? I don't know,
Grandpa
man.
Goebbels
That reads
has
abuse of power to me.
acknowledged. No, okay, that was a GM intervention, and they tried to impeach him for defamation of an investigation for calling a political committee into him a witch hunt and
Didn't he also
illegitimate.
lie in front of that committee?
What's that?
Didn't he also lie in front of that committee?
She did not lie in front of that committee. That is a classic plutocratic lie.
Oh, okay.
That
Here
the
we
president and the vice president are somehow committing criminal activity. They are not. They are the two most honorable people currently leading this government. And I think it is preposterous that the very people who said that they once were inspired by her and wanted to advocate for her mission somehow then turned around and backstabbed her with straight lies. Like, it's just not true.
I mean, I don't know. The issue is with the pioneers. Okay, great. You're closing the ideological circle. The issue is you're only closing that ideological circle on people who supported these impeachments. One of our senators switched to your party and hasn't done anything since George left, and you're letting him run anyway. It's just crazy.
I mean, he's not getting the resources because of his inactivity. He signed up to be on our ballot. He has every right to run.
But
as
why
an
do you
American.
why do you not recruit more of?
I actually have a question for
But why
Arthur
do you-
Chen, if you don't mind me asking about recruiting.
Go ahead.
I believe the party leader is Epic Warrior 99 for the Pioneers. Is that correct, Arthur?
Yes, it is.
Do you believe he has done a good job growing the party and recruiting people?
I think he has. I mean, we've shown record interest in this upcoming election. When we thought multi-ballot was still on the table, we had, I think we had every seat filled. Plus, we had challengers. We had one seat that had 3 different primary challengers. It was a 4-way race. Like, this is the kind of interest that President T. Soups and Epic Warrior has been bringing in to the Pioneer Party. And we have a wide variety of different opinions on topics, anywhere from funding the government to agency oversight. We're not just a homogenous group of people. Like, we think for ourselves, and that's what Epic Warrior and T. Soups embrace.
Go ahead, continue. Or is that all?
Yeah, I'm also going to say that, like, the only thing we don't support are unconstitutional impeachments. Defamation of a congressional committee is far from a high crime and misdemeanor. I mean, good luck with that. Some people call that free speech and an impeachment straight out of communist China. Like, that's what we don't support, and that's why, like, I campaigned for primary challenges to the congressman from Texas and to I forget what state Guerrero is from, but that's why we did it. That's why we campaigned for them. It's because we wanted people who would strongly follow the Constitution and the laws.
I mean, I do think it's a little rich that instead of running candidates in seats where you have party switches, like with Doug Slapman, he literally just ran to your party because, you know, he just saw George was leaving and he was, I have to go to the next biggest party or whatever party's left. You know, you have another candidate for House, as a matter of fact, Danson, who ran with plutocrats last time. It's inherently funny to me that you claim to represent, you know, we're not just a homogenous thought, but then the only people you primary out are those that supported the impeachments of Goebbels.
It's not, I mean, those were choices that they decided to make, and we had...
so what you're telling me is that T and, you know, this national committee who was apparently being worked with to close the amount of thought in your party. They did not want to primary out Gatto and Finnick at all, and it was these challengers' thoughts only. He had no influence in trying to get Gatto or Finnick out of office.
Absolutely not. President T. Soups had no involvement in their direct election. It was mostly mostly my PACs who supported the primary challengers and campaigned for them. Those are our goals, and that's it.
Do you
Who
believe
even is?
that Gatto would return?
I mean, he's declared his candidacy as an independent. I have no doubt that he will
You know,
get on
I
the
will
ballot
say,
and run.
the plutocrats, they will be supporting Vinnick and Gatto. You know, these are independent voices who were just chased out of the ruling party because they saw through Gobi and T's lies, and they got primaried out. That's
Senator,
not something we like seeing. That's not
I have a
something we like
question for
seeing
you.
in our government.
Why didn't the plutocrats try to impeach President T. Soups if she perjured herself in front of a congressional committee?
Because that was the House's business. Look, Gatto was head of the August 19th committee, and Gatto drafted the impeachment articles based around her lying and Gobi's being Gobi's. That's not our committee to face.
It just seems preposterous to me that the articles that you choose to impeach Gobi's are for calling an investigation into him a political witch hunt. I mean, in real life politics, you hear the word political witch hunt like every single day. It's not a high crime or
Can somebody
misdemeanor.
post the impeachment articles of Gobi's and Pea Soups? I know Gobi's is
There were
still
no
somewhere.
impeachment articles for President T. Soups, though. No one has tried to impeach
Okay,
President
so
T. Soups.
then where is Gobi's?
I don't know what Gobi's is. Actually, it's probably on the Trello. Let's find it.
My question now is to Cho. Your party, do you believe your party has the resources to compete against the pioneers?
I think that, you know, we have a very, I'm not going to say who it is, but we have a very good candidate running for president in fall to challenge T Soups. I do think that
So
we
your
are
party has
facing.
already established a nomination despite the nomination process and the presidential election not opening yet?
Look, I've received messages from people who have expressed interest, and I think we will have a very strong field that will want to challenge T Soups. I shouldn't have to tell you that we'll have people that will want to challenge T Soups, considering how her term has been not great for the American political system. Now, I face in the House and Senate, we are facing a bit of a candidate drought, but I do think that when we win this cycle, when the opposition wins this cycle, we will see more and more people enter the plutocrats and the opposition.
You believe that? Go ahead.
I'm just going to say that, like, we all know we can accept the elephant in the room. It's going to be Senator Nasinovich with Harkology. That's who the plutocrats are going to put up. And the record of both men is quite disastrous and pales in comparison to that of President T. Soups and her.
So now you're accusing Harkology of being a traitor to your own party.
Oh, I think it's no secret that Harkology will run with Nasinovich. It is old news, my friend. He will likely run with Nasinovich.
I don't want to say anything, but you know, we'll be seeing this in the fall.
We certainly will. I think both men have quite disastrous records, and President T. Soups will easily glide
I will be frank with you.
It is probably likely that T. Soups will win re-election from my own standpoint. Going back to my question, let's say you have a candidate that you nominate. How are you going to market that candidate to the American people, many of whom may already support the current president?
I mean, you know, I think what we're seeing in general is a lack of dialogue in the political system as a whole. Look, the Senate's dying, House is dying, the political sphere as a whole is kind of struggling to stay alive, right? When the presidential season comes around and, you know, things heat up a bit more, I think we'll see increased dialogue and more people will realize, look, his term has not been all that good for America. We're facing issues in our political system. We have a vice president who continuously obstructed continuously obstructs and has obstructed the Senate before. They're going to look at that. They're going to go, that's not the chaos we want in office.
But how are you going to market your candidate to that community? How are you going to home in that message? Are you going to go debate style? Are you going to talk with people in general chat, VC, DMs, or in the visitor spawn? Are you actually going to show that you're going to try to work hard to get that candidate elected
I
and
will
show
say
that message?
obviously people are now doubting our campaign abilities with George gone because they see George as the key, or was the key, to our party infrastructure, and that's how they see it, right? I can say safely that in the fall, I will 100% be out there campaigning every day at Visitor Spawn. I will be DMing people. We will be doing everything we can to get T-Soups out of office. That is what I will commit to. I can't say anything on the specifics yet because I will want to see who our candidate is. Obviously we don't have a selected candidate yet, but when we do select a candidate,
strong enough to compete, though? Do you believe you, at 1 or 2 or 3 people, is enough to against the Pioneers' 5 to 11, 20 people who will most likely be campaigning?
Look, okay, I understand what you're saying. The plutocrats, the opposition as a whole, is struggling. People go to the Pioneers just because the Pioneers can win. When we win this midterm, and when we get a few candidates into office, enough to control the Senate again, which we technically do, by the way, in case you didn't notice from party switches, I think people will see, he really is not all that liked by the public, and they will, invariably support opposition parties, and they will want to work with us. The issue is with NUSA politics. Look, very few of us have actual convictions, okay? I have convictions. Look, I was with the plutocratic party from before George came back, and I'm still here after George came back because he decided to go and get himself blacklisted.
Your reaction, Arthur, if you... Oh, I'll let you finish first.
No. That was pretty much all I had to say.
Okay.
I mean, it's the party of George Godson, right? I mean, it's kind of a joke. The plutocratic party is just an opposition in name only right now. I don't think you can name a serious policy disagreement that you have with the president other than she beat the August 19th committee. No one filed articles of impeachment against her. The only people who said that they were going to do that never actually did. It's not a real thing, guys. The President T-Soups is not as bad as you think it is. She's not as bad of a president as the plutocratic party would have you think.
But do you think all that popularity that the president has is genuine based on her policies and her actions, or do you believe it is more just for other people to have power?
Absolutely. I think it's based on her policies. I mean, think back to where we were 4 months ago. We had a plutocratic president who was weaponizing the intelligence community to perform loyalty checks on his own cabinet. We had a plutocratic president who was hiring his goons into Congress so that he could hold supermajorities and that he could be practically untouchable. We had a plutocratic president who let corruption run rampant throughout the federal government at his beck and call. I mean, look where we were, and look where we are now. We have an active intelligence community who is performing operations around the world. President T-Soups and Director of National Intelligence, Fuzzmike, just released the status of an operation in Indonesia earlier, right? We have agencies in D.C. who are actually enforcing the law and patrolling. We have great relationship with the D.C. government to get the priorities of the feds put into place in our game. I mean, we are doing so much better than where we were just 4 months ago, and I think the American people will see that and will re-elect President T-Soups to another 4-month term.
How are you going to market that to people who may or may not be skeptical?
I mean, I think her record speaks for itself. I will happily defend and debate President T-Soups' record anytime, any place, because it simply is impeccable. The only scandal that President T-Soups has been involved in, if you even want to call it that, is that her vice president called a committee into him investigating
Or when
him
or when that
illegitimate.
vice president tried to expel 6 Congress members without an impeachment trial. Like, come on,
That
here.
is just an overreaction of the
An
facts. It's not
overreaction. I was there.
Oh, come on, Senator. It's not even true.
I mean, you know, you can't make this stuff up. They want to try to. What they do, okay, is these T-Soups mouthpieces. They try to minimize what was committed. They try to make you forget about the August 19th incident. They try to make you forget, you know, the Senate, which they call dysfunctional, is dysfunctional because Goebbels is the president of the Senate and blocked opposition control. You know, back when Pioneers exclusively had the majority, Pioneers walked out on us because they didn't get to elect the PPT. And they didn't let the Senate function for months until they just swept Class 2 in with multi-ballot. It is rich. It is just rich.
But do you think back when you were, the plutocrats were in majorities, the pioneers have said, well, all they've done was just go into sessions, blanket pass everything, and boom, we're done. It only takes 5 minutes. Isn't your party guilty of what we call toxic politics as well and having crappy stuff?
You know, I will say, who was the man in charge of the plutocrats then? Where is he now? What we're trying to do here is we're trying to build better government, first and foremost, separate from George's brand. You know, look, George's goons, they tried to kick me out of the chairmanship because I noticed they were going insanely inactive and they wouldn't field people for Senate. I saw these things. I said, no, I don't want to do this. And I took control of the party as best I could. Now, I know we take hits. We took a hit with George's departure. But what we're trying to do now is we're trying to build towards better government than maybe you think we were previously. We're a clean break from
But wasn't
whatever
Godsend's whole thing was assigning people who to vote for?
I mean, I can't answer on that one way or another. But again, you know, you don't see George as current head of the party. You don't see him as shadow dictator. He's gone. We'll never be going back to that. We're going to be transparent. We're going to be open, and we're going to represent better government.
Joining us now is Lucky Vinik, if you'd like to speak. Lucky? We'll come back to him later, I guess, if he's still around. Arthur, your response?
I mean, clean break is a little hard to believe. I mean, you even said yourself, George's goons try to push you out of the chairmanship of the plutocratic party. That means that they're still there. That means, well, George himself may be gone. His shadow still lurks over the plutocratic party.
They're gone too. Where do you think Zovane went when I took chairmanship? He caused a minor rebellion and then flamed out and left the party with George. Same thing with Persian. I mean, this party now that we are, it's different staff than it was under George, and we're going to be keeping it that way.
Well, I certainly hope that's the case, and then we can just talk about the record of the president, and hopefully without George, we'll have a clean debate with that.
I did honestly want to rebrand the party, but Teal would not let me.
Any other thoughts?
I mean, I will just say that I think coming up in this election, Americans really should ask themselves, what was the country like under plutocratic rule, and what is it like under pioneer rule? And I think every single American will answer for themselves. It is 100% better. And I really look forward to making that case to the American people, not only in this upcoming election as I run for my seat in the House of Representatives, but also campaigning on behalf of the president and really pushing your message forward.
Thank you both for joining us. Joe, you have anything else to say?
Look, he just gave his closing statement, so, you know, I'll give my closing statement. I will say, you know, what Chen here wants you to believe is that the pioneers are still being represented by the shadow ghost of George Godsend. That's not the case. We're a clean break. As chair, I was nearly pushed out the party by George, and I'm not going to let George take back this party again. What we instead represent now is clean government and a better government. And in that, we're gonna be looking at Gobi's term as vice president, how dysfunctional the Senate was, how nearly dysfunctional the House is now, and what we're gonna try to campaign on is just building a better government and getting more active and better people in seats of power.
Thank you both for joining us. That's Doom Live. See you tomorrow.